Hi, Scott Stankowski here from CentralWisconsinSports.net, and we're bringing you a new little piece that hopefully will become a mainstay with one of my good friends, Chef Thad Klasinski. He is the owner and operator of Michele's Restaurant and Catering. Chef Thad, Austin and I were out in the woods a couple weeks ago and shot some turkeys, and you were gracious enough to bring us around and gonna cook us some fine dishes.
Well, Scott, I'll tell you, if I could keep up with all the things that you and your sons harvest from the woods, I think we'd have to do shows repeatedly over time. But we have some turkey that was brought in. Scott prepped it very nicely from the field. He brought in dark and white meat. I was impressed. Many of the people that I've worked with that have brought me wild turkeys before, or that I've actually harvested myself, most people don't keep the thigh. Scott was wise enough to take the thigh, and that is the one cut of meat on a turkey that gives you the fat that other parts of that turkey do not. We're going to break it into two sections. Use a real stiff chef's knife, something with a real thick tang on it, something that can go through bones. Most game, it goes even with a deer, you find that articulation point, right? Find where that is and see if you can get your knife to go into that point, and then find it again. We're trying to get between the bones. Okay, so I got the head of the femur. I guess that was what we call, that's all cartilage there. So I kind of cut through the cartilage to separate those two. This is that wonderful thigh I told you about, okay? The thigh that to me is the most underrated part of that turkey. Remember that, boys, when you're out in the woods, save the thighs. I'm using it for the meat in the soup. You could use it for all different things. You probably could get away with even taking this and just pan frying like we do venison medallions sometimes. It's so rich and dark and just nice stuff. We're leaving the bone in. When we're making stocks, we can leave some of the cruddy stuff in. As you know, we're going to go ahead and take this and we're going to boil it. So we're going to break down most of those proteins, and we're really looking for the stock in the end, that the liquid we get in the end. So I've broken them into two groups. I mentioned earlier that sometimes we'll take it and score this so it cooks more uniformly. We get the liquid to work in, cooks quicker, more uniformly, gets flavors inside. So I scored that. But we're going to put this right in some boiling water. And then the water, we're going to add some ingredients to help the stock out. We're going to add, this is about a quart of water. We're going to add, I'm going to add probably 2 tablespoons of kosher salt. About 4 or 5 bay leaves. Then we're going to add about a teaspoon of white pepper. I'm going to turn up the heat. We're going to let this, when it comes to a boil, we'll turn it down to a simmer, and we will let it stay there for as much as 4 hours. Probably having to add liquid as we go along to replace what cooks off. But that's the start of our soup. Pretty simple recipe. We're trying to get the flavors from the bones and the meats to create that stock. So this has been boiling, and that's going to be the basis of our soup. That's going to be the stock. So we're going to come and we're going to go ahead and drain the stock now it's been cooking. So the way I set this up is I'll typically just get a colander on top of another pan, and I'll pour off the bones and the meat that's now fallen off the bone to some extent, just so in case there were any maybe pellets or wood fragments, they're not going to get in the stock. Now we have a clear, strained stock. I'm going to take from the stock, and I'm going to pull the meat away. That'll be the meat for our soup. The stock's going to be turned up to a high heat. Let that simmer. John, you can get the other vegetables if you would from the cooler. Okay. So here, we're just going to try to cut away any meat that we can, keeping away from the tendons. You'll notice that it kind of looks like it's been cut through once before. Well, honestly, it was. About an hour and a half into it, I decided to cut some slits into these turkeys. These turkeys had they were so firm, I decided I'd expose more meat to the cooking medium, the water. So I kind of scored all the drummies and to get more of that flavor in and around the meat that was trying to be cooked. So I'm going to pull as much of that meat as I can. Bay leaves, I told you about those being put in the water. It's like this bird got hit with one of the pellets, maybe hit it in the leg. I know that I didn't drive a knife through it like that, so who knows, maybe a little luck for us. Some of the bone marrow came out and added to the wonderful flavor of the soup. Once I have the meat tendon-free, ligament-free, fat-free, I'm going to chop in pieces that would make sense to you for a soup. You can hear the knife snap sometimes. You hear the knife snap driving through wild game, that means there's probably something in there you don't want. And trust me, if you've ever seen a turkey leg, there's a lot going on there. As you can see, the soup has come to a boil. We've added the apple with bacon. We've added the bell peppers. We've added the scallion, the green onion, the Bermuda onion. Those have now cooked in that boiling liquid. So they've softened up, okay? What we're going to do now is we're going to add heavy whipping cream. Okay? Quart of soup, I'm going to add probably as much as 2 cups of this. We're going to add the solid roux, the hot liquid. The liquid has to be hot, and we have to work the French whip into the soup as it's cooking to make the roux do its magic. Once it thickens, then we're going to add our cooked wild rice medley and our rendered meat. As far as the thickness goes, it's to your liking. I'm going to try to get it to the consistency of almost like a chowder. And one of the things with using a roux is you've got to be a little careful, because if you think you don't have enough, you might want to just give it a little more time and temperature, because it'll all of a sudden go from being not thick enough to what you see there, maybe even a little too thick. One of the glories of using a roux is I can cut this liquid back. I can add a little more stock or even a little bit of hot water to thin it. We're going to go ahead and add the wild rice. We've got about 2 cups of wild rice medley. We've got about 1.5 to 2 cups of the chopped turkey meat from our thighs, a little bit from the legs. Quite a thick soup. We're going to thin it with some more water. Maybe take a flat bowl like so. We're going to just put a little bit of color on it. And we say bon appetit. I'm confident you're going to like this recipe.
That is amazing.
Feel good soup. So it's a meal. A soup should be a meal. You put that in front of you, you get some nice bread, and hell, I think you could put that out in your duck blind and have it to warm your belly on a cold fall afternoon.
That's fantastic.
So, cream of turkey wild rice. It's a hit every time. Enjoy.
All right.
Oh my goodness. This is so good. Oh my God. This is so delicious.